Welcome to the premiere episode of Skeptical Believers. I am your host, Jason Newman. Come on a journey with me as we delve into the possibility of supernatural forces behind some of the most famous true crime cases with a skeptical mind. Today, we will talk about what led Ronald DeFeo Jr. to kill his father, mother, brothers, and sisters. Was it drug and alcohol induced, or were supernatural forces at play? And to give a little reference behind Ronald DeFeo Jr., he was an American mass murderer who was tried and convicted of the 1974 killings of his father, mother, two brothers, and two sisters in Amityville, Long Island, New York. His father, Ronald Sr., from what was said, wasn't that great of a guy. At least in the home setting, he wasn't that great. He was abusive in a way that hasn't been said what type of abuse went on, but apparently it was bad enough to where the children didn't have any friends over because it was that bad. Now, a little backstory on Ronald DeFeo Jr. He was born on September 26, 1951 in Brooklyn, New York. And growing up, he was subject to most of the abuse that his father brought on him. And 23 years later, on November 23rd, November 13th, 1974, he was 23 at the time. He entered into a bar called Henry's Bar in Amityville, Long Island, New York, and he pretty much shouted, "Hey, you got to help me. I think my mother and father are shot." So him and a group of people went to the house at 112 Ocean Avenue, which was located near the bar, and found that his parents were dead inside. One person in the group, his DeFeo Jr.'s friend, Joe Yeswit, made the phone call to the Suffolk County Police Department, who's then later on, as soon as they get there, searched the house and found that 6 members of the family had died in their beds. The victims were his parents, Ronald DeFeo Sr., who was 43, and his mother, Louise DeFeo, who was also 43. His two sisters, Dawn, who was 18, Allison, who was 13, and his two brothers, Mark, who was 12, and John Matthew, who was 9. It appears his weapon of choice was a .35 caliber lever-action Marlin 336C rifle, and the approximate time of death was around 3 o'clock that morning. So it had some time had passed between the shootings and the time he went to the bar. And the DeFeo parents, Butch is what DeFeo Ronald Jr. was called by his family, but his parents had both been shot twice, while all the children had been shot with a single shot. And some physical evidence suggests that Louise DeFeo and her daughter Allison, which is Ron Jr.'s sister, happened to be awake during the time of their deaths. Just bear with me, this is my first podcast ever, so any hiccups or coughs, just bear with me. Apparently, according to the Suffolk County Police, all 6 of them were found lying face down in bed. The whole family had occupied 112 Ocean Avenue since purchasing it in 1965. His father, mother, 2 sisters, and 2 brothers were buried in the nearby St. Charles Cemetery in Farmingdale. Of course, Ronald DeFeo Jr. was the eldest son and the only survivor of the killing, because some say he did it. He was taken to the local police station for his own protection after suggesting to police officers at the scene of the crime that the killings had been carried out by a mob hitman, Louis Fellini. And apparently there was inconsistencies in the version of the events. One day he would say that he confessed to carrying out the killings. Next time he would say Fellini, the alleged hitman, did it, and he had an accomplice in his sister, Allison or Dawn. Like, there's various inconsistencies in what happened. But Fellini didn't do it. The alleged hitman. He had an alibi proving he was out of state at the time. Then DeFeo just fessed up and said, "I did it once I started. I just couldn't stop. It was too fast." Between the killings and going to the bar later that night, he admitted he had taken a bath, redressed, and detailed the area where the shootings happened, and he discarded crucial evidence such as the clothes he was wearing at the time of the murders, the rifle, and the cartridges before going to work as usual. So between all of that, he had time to clean up and go to work like nothing had happened. Well, the following year, in October of 1975, his trial began on the 14th of October. He and his defense lawyer, William Weber, mounted an affirmative defense of insanity because he said that he started hearing voices in his head saying that he had to kill his family. Now, on a little side note, he just so happened to be a heavy drug and alcohol user. His drugs of choice were LSD and meth. What a combination. And the voices in his head for his plea of insanity were plotting against him and pretty much was telling him to do it. The insanity plea that they put in was supported by the psychiatrist for the defense, Daniel Swartz. The psychiatrist for the prosecution, Dr. Harold Zolan, maintained that although DeFeo was a user of heroin and LSD, that he had antisocial personality disorder and was aware of the action at the time of the crime. So not only was he on drugs, he also had a mental condition to go along with that. It's a little over a month later, on November 21st, 1975, he was found guilty on six counts of second-degree murder. And a couple of weeks later, on December 4th, 1975, the judge in the case, Thomas Stark, sentenced DeFeo to 6 sentences of 25 years of life, and all 6 sentences were to be served. I don't know how they put it, back to back in a way. And he was held at the Sullivan Correctional Facility in Fallsburg, New York, until his death. He had just died recently, which I just found out, which is March 12th of 2021 of this year. So, he died just a few months ago. But during that, while he was incarcerated, all of his appeals and requests to the parole board had been denied. There were some controversies about the case, as in, since all the bodies were found face down with no signs of struggle. And the police investigation concluded that the rifle had not been fitted with any type of sound suppressor, and found evidence of sedatives having been administered, because he admitted to the reason there was no struggle because he had sedated his family to where they couldn't get up and run away if they wanted to. But however, the autopsy indicated otherwise. Dr. Adelman, who did the toxicology report, and he pretty much found out that pretty much summed up that it turned out nothing turned up in the body. Neighbors didn't hear anything being fired, even though it was 3 o'clock in the morning. 3 o'clock in the morning is usually pretty quiet around that time, no matter where you are. You would probably find, or you would probably hear gunshots at that early in the morning, especially if there's no sound suppressor to silence it. Even the neighbors said they couldn't hear gunshots, and all they heard was at that time in the morning, the family sheepdog Shaggy barking. Even though he had Ronald Jr. had a volatile relationship with his father, the motive for the killings weren't clear. And he pretty much asked the police what he had to do, because apparently there's a life insurance policy on his father. Didn't he asked police what he had to do in order to collect his father's life insurance, which prompted the prosecution to suggest at the trial that this was the motive for the killings, was for him to collect the life insurance policies. Like I said before, he gave varying accounts of how the killings were carried out, and this was after his conviction. He did an interview in 1986 for Newsday. He claimed that his sister Dawn killed the father, and then their distraught mother killed all the siblings, apparently with a .38 caliber Smith & Wesson revolver, before he killed his mother. He stated that he took the blame because he was afraid to say anything negative about his mother to her father, which is his grandfather, Michael Brigante Sr.